Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
that went well. How do you feel, Gavin? That was like your first interview conversation, and I loved the dialogue and the questions that you had prepared for Emil, and it felt really good to just kind of get to know the both of you a little bit better.
It was great.
Yeah,
I loved it.
I did too. I had so much fun. Oh man, this is great.
Yeah, and I said to Gavin before you hopped on the call, Emil, that maybe the stars will align and the two of you can meet in person one day. I think
That'd
that'd
be
be
great.
incredible also.
That would be
love
great.
it.
The education culture wars have a new target: pride flags in the classroom.
Right, watching shows like Doc McStuffins, Jessie, and Toon Bops is making all of our kids gay.
Governor Ron DeSantis has signed into law what critics call the Don't Say Gay bill.
Pose was groundbreaking when it sashayed onto our screens 3 years ago and put a spotlight on trans and queer Black and brown people.
A group of 5 Republican senators are calling out the country's television rating system to begin warning parents about TV content that features LGBTQ characters or even narratives.
Throughout this past month, LGBTQ communities in the U.S. have been celebrating Pride in cities and states around the country. Corporate America has made itself a part of that, too, by increasingly tapping into Pride Month.
And it's not just marriage equality. Around the world, LGBTQ rights are moving forward in different ways. Pakistan passed transgender rights. Botswana's High Court recognized the trans woman's identity for the first time.
Today is National Coming Out Day, and in the comic book city of Metropolis, Superman is coming out as bisexual.
To all of the gay and lesbian kids out there tonight who have been told that they are less than by their churches or by the government or by their families, that you are beautiful, wonderful creatures of value, and that no matter what anyone tells you, God does love you, and that very soon, I promise you, you will have equal rights federally across this great nation of ours.
I want to dedicate this to the LGBT community all around the world. I stand here tonight as a proud gay man, and I hope we can all stand together as equals one day. Thank you so much.
So growing up, I think seeing Gene Anthony Ray on Fame as Leroy was hugely important for me. I think it really helped shape my identity of myself. It was, I wasn't super clear. I was in high school. I wasn't clear that he was queer or not, but I felt a kinship to him. I felt a connection to his spirit and his energy. And, I was super creative growing up. I still am. And I think sometimes, that was looked upon kind of like, why aren't you playing sports? Why aren't you doing these other kind of typical masculine things? And I think seeing Gene Anthony Ray, and he had a very revolutionary spirit and energy, and he was, very, just free, right? He's authentically who he was in his spirit and his creativity, and also how he presented himself in his body. And I think that was really, really helpful for me, because it kind of gave me permission and visual language of how I could be and move through the world.
there have been many studies about the fact that, kids, all it takes is having one person that supports them for them to do better, to survive, to not struggle with suicidal ideation, to be able to build self-esteem. And I think it's particularly difficult for queer and trans kids. I think that there are lots of reasons why young people can struggle, whether it's because they have whatever it is with their markers of identity. If it's because they're living in poverty, it's because they're disabled, whatever it is, it can be something that's very difficult growing up different. And for LGBT kids, I think it's especially hard if they don't even feel comfortable like being honest about who they are, and they don't have anyone at home or at school that can let them know that like who they are is perfectly normal, is perfectly human, is perfectly beautiful and worthy of love.
So we're at a very interesting time. I think there's definitely way more LGBTQ plus BIPOC representation across the board than I've ever experienced in my life. So I'm really happy about that. I think that we have to be, we still have to push to have kind of a broad spectrum of representation and not always be the sidekicks or the best friend.
This is the color I want.
This is Damien. He's almost too gay to function.
Like, we want to be the main characters, right? And tell very, very full stories. And I think within the spectrum of LGBTQ, there's so many nuanced, powerful stories. So I'm grateful when I see Billy Porter doing a trans youth story.
You're transitioning so young. I just want to tell you how brave you are.
It's not that brave if you're just being who you are.
I'm excited to see Coleman Domingo playing Bayard Rustin, and just all these young people who are coming out on TV and telling their stories. But we need more. We definitely need more.
I think that is a great effort that people in that media are making to gain a space to show these representations, this opportunity to show these issues that is at the end not issue at all. Spain have a lot of TV shows also, like Veneno, to show the struggle that people in the real life lives with their gender.
I don't think all representation is good. It's a difficult thing to gauge, because we're often so desperate for it that we'll take what we can get. There's a whole documentary about this called Cellulite Closet.
The myth. To be a gay man meant that you not only did you wear pinched clothes and you had this kind of look on your face, but you carried a purse as well.
It's the girls.
I think the feeling is two women are together, then it's probably experimental or some kind of phase. And, if the right guy came along, that would all change.
It's the guys.
That's why people say, oh, I'm a man. Like, being a man is based on who you happen to be boning that day.
Like, if like Laverne Cox is like the gold standard of, queer and trans representation, someone like her, or like the cast in Pose, for example.
When it comes specifically to trans youth in general, everybody could do something when it comes to that. There's a fight for everyone, and right now we are under a lot of hot fire, and the only way is to speak up. We need to rally around our people. We need our allies as much as possible, and also we need to get down there and show them that we're real human beings, and that there doesn't need to be any kind of investigation when it comes to a child coming to their parent and letting them know who they are.
Well, if that's like the gold standard, right? And then there's stuff that's like really horrifying, like Silence of the Lambs, and how that was like a sort of like bizarre, twisted trans character, right? So it's like, it's a spectrum. I would hate to like, prevent people from putting out there like, and trying to make representation happen. And, it's a hit or miss thing. But yeah, not all of it is helpful. And I think anything that, recycles, just tropes and cliches and stereotypes is just never good. Like it's not only is it not good for the community, but it's also not even good like to consume.
That people glad assess, supervise the characters, the script in the media for TV shows, for example. But I think that that happens with all the minority communities. They're a prejudice that maybe can display in terms of in a way, surreptitious way.
You know, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, but I do think that this generation is very inspiring. And so I'd love to know, you know, what people that are your age think about what is missing in representation and how it's failing, you know?
You know, there's definitely more cartoon characters that are LGBTQ, which is good because cartoons are like the easiest way to get through to kids. Not a lot of kids watch Henry Danger, but a lot of kids watch Encanto. So to see that representation everywhere is going to get it just normalized for kids so kids aren't afraid. So then stuff like the Don't Say Gay bill doesn't happen in 50 odd years when these kids are all grown up and in parliament.
Speaking of queer representation in animation, I love Steven Universe. And it was actually a kid who introduced Steven Universe to me. It was an 11-year-old. And it was her favorite show. And I started watching it and I couldn't believe it. And the way that the show progressed and ended in this really gorgeous, like transgender, for me anyway, it spoke to me as a transgender narrative. I mean, I was just obsessed. And even in more mainstream things like the new Buzz Lightyear movie, the fact that like it's just like a regular part of the plot that it happens to be that his best friend and partner happens to be a lesbian and she has this family, you know, and it's not there's no big to do about it. It's just a part of the character. I really like that. I really appreciate that. And that's not something I ever thought I was going to get to see. I didn't think I would get to see that in growing up. I mean, it would be really cool to have a mainstream movie where the main character, you know, is LGBTQ in a blockbuster animated film, and that it also is handled in that way, that it's just like a part of who they are.
I really like shows like that don't mention that it's gay or a part of the LGBTQ plus community or that there's something else going on, that they just make it normal.
Thing like in the Buzz Lightyear movie, where one of the main characters was. I never thought I would get to see that. Like growing up, I was like, we'll never see that.
And I'm really grateful that your generation has more permission, has more freedom to kind of express yourselves. You know, I didn't have that growing up. I'll be 55 this year, and it's like, it was very different. You know, it's very kind of, you had to hold everything close and everything was like a secret. And so I think, you know, again, watching Gene Anthony Ray on Fame, and also that he went to a performing arts school and all the other kids were like super creative and kind of living their dreams, that all of that, it's like I could see myself fitting in. And that I think was hugely important for me.
I think that every time is more close for people to see in the media, the unnatural, to see that kind of representations in the media, because for me, I speak about the presentations, the diversity of the sexuality presentations. There's nothing new about. We can find in the beginning of the civilization these forms of live the sexuality and the identity also. So now is more visible for us. So it's important that the media shows that, but in the natural way, not in the mystery way or like in weird ways or the strangers. So they are the strange people, the monstruo. You know Paul Preciado?
For instance, the gay and lesbian movement or the LGBT movement, even the transsexual movement, the question would be like, is our objective, our aim within these movements is to define and redefine identity and make identity visible and construct identity, or maybe is to invent new practices of freedom?
And I think a lot of us queer folks have this. It's like being our most authentic selves, right? When it's a little bit scary because we're breaking down barriers and we're crashing through ceilings and we're pushing back against the status quo. And sometimes that can be scary, but it's definitely worth it. But we also have to be concerned about our safety.
It's always better. It's always better to be able to be honest about who you are as soon as possible, as soon as you can, because then you're more able to love yourself. You can't love yourself if you're not being honest about who you are. Then then any love that you build is really false. It's fraudulent. It's an artifice. You can't love yourself until you can accept yourself and be honest about who you are. And it took me a really long time. And frankly, if we'd had better representation in media, then maybe it wouldn't have. And maybe it wouldn't have taken me this long, and maybe I could have learned to love myself sooner.
Back and forth, just like a clock, love two hearts to share. Up and down in total shock to love's blind eyes compare. There again and back once more, hearts love will never fear. Love will travel through bolt-locked door, for this love is queer.
Your name feels dry on my lips. I'm sick of you monopolizing my conversations. My mouth is the desert.
The Oscar goes to.
And the Oscar goes to.
And the Oscar goes to.
Alejandro G. Inarritu.
Guillermo del Toro.
Alfonso Cuarón.
In this documentary, we will focus on the cultural impact of the three amigos of Hollywood, or in other words, Alfonso Cuarón, Guillermo del Toro, and Alejandro González Iñárritu. These three are the first Hispanic directors to win major awards like the Oscars, Golden Globes, and many more. So together, we will learn about the start of these directors' careers and how they shaped the world of film into what it is today. This quote was said by Oscar-winning director Bong Joon-ho during his Golden Globes acceptance speech for his 2019 film Parasite. While this documentary isn't about him, he brings a great point forward about foreign films. They bring so many new original stories and really open up a whole new world of film. That's why I think it's important for me to talk about these three directors, because they show that with enough hard work and support of people around you, you can make a name for yourself no matter where you come from. While we all know now of these directors and their accomplishments, let's learn more about their upbringing to see really where they started from in comparison to now. First, we're going to talk about Alfonso Cuarón. Cuarón was born in 1961 in Mexico City. When Cuarón first started his journey of becoming a filmmaker, he decided to attend Universitario de Estudios de Cinematográficos. But that was short-lived, seeing that he was expelled from his school for creating a controversial project where he shot the entire thing in English instead of Spanish. Cuarón thought that was going to be the end of his career until he got the opportunity to work at a Mexican television studio as a technician. He made sure to work his way up in hopes of one day becoming a director. He had his directorial debut in 1991 with the release of Solo con tu pareja. Over the years, he continued to build a name for himself and create projects and stories that he wanted to tell. Now we're going to talk about Alejandro González Iñárritu. Iñárritu was born in 1963 in Mexico City. Iñárritu didn't start off with a passion of becoming a director. In fact, he was kicked out of school when he was 16 years old and decided to become a transatlantic sailor. Being able to visit the entire world, see many places, different cultures, that is what inspired him to create stories and become a director. After that, he decided to get an education to better achieve his goals at the Universidad Iberoamericana. He started off his career as a DJ at a Mexican radio station, but what made him different was the playlist that he made. Each of his playlists told a story pieced together by different songs. Iñárritu would then move on to work as a producer for a Mexican TV company, eventually starting his own in 1991 called Zeta Films. The company focused on making TV advertisements, but before becoming a full-time director, he focused on his first passion of music, going on to create 6 original scores. Iñárritu moved to the United States where he had his directorial debut for the film Amores Perros. In retrospect of who he is today, it's rather crazy to think that his passion didn't lie within films, but looking at his life story and his inspirations, its compelling nature is a powerful lesson. Last but certainly not least, we have Guillermo del Toro, born in 1964 in Guadalajara, Mexico. From a young age, del Toro always had an interest in the world of film. He started off making short films in high school and shortly after attended the University of Guadalajara where he studied filmmaking. His career began with special effects makeup where he co-founded the company Necropia in 1985. From there, he went on to work with several episodes as a director and writer of a Mexican show called Hora Marcada, which we will talk about later. After working on that show, he had his directorial debut with Cronos. Del Toro had a passion for filmmaking and kept working his way up until he got the chance to create the stories he always wanted to tell. The three directors today are best friends, but it took years of working with each other to reach this point. Remember that show I mentioned earlier, Hora Marcada? Well, that's where Cuarón first met Del Toro in the 1980s. Years later, Del Toro watched an early cut of one of Cuarón's films. He ended up calling him, telling him that he made a masterpiece, but it was 20 minutes too long. So Del Toro visited him and helped him edit down the film. The friendship only grew from there. Inarritu met Cuarón through a mutual friend, Emmanuel Lubisky, who has done camera work for both of their projects over the years. But their friendship has been long-lasting because it's been built off their love for their film and their ability to be honest with each other on their projects. The films that these three alone have created will have a long-lasting impact on fans all around the world. The films have iconic characters that fans love and stories that will keep people engaged. The stories are sometimes used as standards for films, seeing the complexity that goes into them, both film-wise and storytelling-wise. They all use inspiration from their lives and pour that into the films, which matches a quote by Inarritu. Together, these three directors inspired so many filmmakers, including myself, and will continue to do so. The impact that just these three alone have for the film industry leaves a very optimistic view for diversity opening up in the film industry. For as long as I can remember, storytelling has been a major part of my life. My earliest memories go as far back as playing with my Legos, creating a mess around my whole room. While sure, it looked like a mess to others, to me it was characters, a story, just a whole new world, a safe haven for me. That's why now as a filmmaker, I'm creating stories that I want to share with others. Not only of my stories, but stories that aren't heard before. To pursue my career as a filmmaker, I decided that I had to go back to my roots, and that's New York. So I packed my bags, left Miami, said goodbye to my friends and family, and took that next step not only for myself, but for my future. All filmmakers have one major thing in common. We all take things from our roots, cultures, and families. So if you ask any filmmaker about what inspired them, we would all say, we're just products of our communities.
Right, so we're very excited to be some of the pioneers to bring shipping container architecture for residential uses in Miami. So about a year ago, Creative Media Group drove by our house. They were very interested in the project. So they wanted to create a microcampus nearby here. So we're very excited to work with them and collaborate.
I think it's important to mention that we see this as a great opportunity to participate in a project that here in Little Haiti and working with a nonprofit organization and being able to create a sustainable environment.
If you need to build fast, you can just put them on the site and build. But also if you need to move them out, the same deal. You put it on a truck and then you move it out of the property. My name is Marcelo Ortortegui.
And my name is Sara Valente.
We are Stereotank.
My name is Matilda Francois. I was born and raised in Haiti, and the name of my project is Sous l'eau 2.0, or in English, Water Source 2.0.
My name is Henry Rueda. I'm an architect. I am the chair of the Department of Architecture here at FIU. Part of the idea behind the sort of the goals of the educational sort of the vision that we have is also to work in multiple sort of topics. Sustainability, the sort of environmental challenges that we have, especially in Miami, which is very dramatic. Community engagement, technology and innovation, and we have incredible facilities, and also sort of being or building a place here in the community of Miami and South Florida.
So I know one thing people are gonna ask for sure is like, how are you gonna power this up? Like, you know, there is not really electricity and jealousy or in Haiti really, because you know everything is so timed out as far as electricity. So I thought, you know, two ways: wind turbines and solar panels. So that way they could, you know, it'll all happen on the roof up here.
Okay.
That's where the wind turbines and the solar panels would be placed, and that would power, you know, this whole building.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is the idea.
The infrastructural side of the project was really important because it was about water, but the community around was of special importance because we know the role of awareness at the moment is crucial, right? So the project needed to have a series of components that were very important, and in the case of Matilda, she was able to create this hybrid. Architecture gives you a base, a framework that you can work from. So becoming an architect can also mean becoming a social activist, can also mean becoming an artist, can also mean becoming an urban visionary. My name is Sara Valente, and I've been part of the adjunct faculty here at FIU since 2017.
So about jealousy, I guess it's a slum where about 60,000 people live there, and ever since the earthquake, more and more people started living there. And so as you can see here, so that's jealousy, right? It's on the mountain.
Yeah, it's a lot of houses.
Yeah, it's they build like right on top of each other. And so the people there, you know, they do whatever they can to make a life for themselves. For each main distribution center, which I call the community center, right, it will be connected to substations. And those substations are those remote fountains. They're smaller and more accessible to the people. And then, so for each of like, let's see, for each 100 house, there will be one main distribution station with two substations, which are the remote fountains. So you see these radiuses. So for each one of these, that's where you will have all of those happening. Now, my main thing is, one thing I was stressing about is the location. Because jealousy, like everything is already built. And it's not like I was able to go over there to check out to see if I could find a plot of land that's empty. So so that's why like right now I'm just like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not building on somebody's house, you know. So for me, the main success, or what would be successful about this project, would be the remote fountains, because those, they're smaller and you can place them in any, you know, 10 by, what was it, 10 by 20, like plot of land.
My name is James Francois, and I'm Matilda's father. The time I realized when she was really good is when they had an exposure of her art, what she did. And then when I saw all those things that she did, I said, no, she's very special. And at that time, I was trying to have her play basketball because that was one of my passions. So, okay, if I have a girl, okay, she's gonna play basketball. When I realized where she at and what she's doing, I said, let me just let her follow her dream, do what she has to do.
Creative Media Group has truly impacted my career and my life for the better. Maria and Tony are just some of the most generous, kind, supportive, and knowledgeable people I've crossed paths with in the industry and out. Maria is actually like my older sister now. She is my mentor in and out of the industry. I can go to her for anything, whether it's questions with life, networking, communication tools, just you name it, and she's there for me.
I feel like as I get older, I'm becoming more deliberate, more intentional, and purposeful. And with this new journey that I'm on, even though it's unpredictable and I don't know what the outcome is going to be, I really feel as though I'm being led.
When we gave you that assignment, I saw pins flying. Ooh, I get to finally talk about what it is that I love to do, right? Because that's what this program is all about. How do we support what you guys love to do? How do we help you articulate what it is that you love to do? Because sometimes that's hard too, as a creative or just as a person, to talk about yourself kind of seems a little challenging at times. That's why this round circle that we form, this circle of inclusion, is where we can kind of have this cipher and talk about what it is that we have going on. So
when I really felt like I was being called to something bigger than myself was when I was making our first set of t-shirts for our boys for the workshop that we were hosting with the foster youth. And as I was putting their names on their shirts, because that's something that I wanted to be intentional in naming them, naming the faces of the underrepresented community of young people and creatives. I felt like remembering somebody's name is important. So I'm putting the shirts together and, you know, putting their names on the shirts, because I know the next day is when we're gonna have to, you know, get everybody together and organize the shoot, which is always a super exciting day because that's when our young people get to put their hands on the camera. And for some of them, that's the first time that they've ever handled a piece of equipment of an industry standard.
You were cinematographer.
No, I was the producer.
You producer, cinematographer this time.
And it was a lot. I learned a lot from them, you know, making sure that the shots we choose are really meaningful and impactful. Keeping up with time, not being afraid to speak up, and letting the other team members know that we gotta go. It's been really cool and fun with them. And also this week we have been working with them for a short film challenge, and it also has been really great. We get a chance to use new equipment, and I figure out what was a dolly for the first time. It was really cool, you know. We got to use, you know, new equipment, new camera, something red.
As we started to host these workshops and experiences, that I really realized that the takeaway was not just the technical side of filmmaking, but the mentorship and the connectivity and the guidance that we were giving. But I really want to talk about how challenging it is to get that train in motion when you are alone by yourself, fueling that momentum and gathering resources, calling on your friends, emailing people, looking for support as a female business owner, as a female entrepreneur, and now as the founder of a nonprofit. It's super hard. I'm so thankful for you all, Jeffrey, Michelle, Vanessa, New York City. Like, we had a good time.
Yes, we did.
I'm thankful for the opportunities to be able to work in Miami and work in New York, work with young creatives that are super talented. You know, my experience being a creative is, majority of the time, I'm the only black girl on set. For me, that's a problem. That's a problem I felt was my duty to help change. There's power in storytelling. The fact that you can put a camera in a young person's hand, and then that camera can open up opportunities for experiences, for relationships. I'm excited about presenting opportunities to young people, an opportunity to move outside of our box and claim our seat at the table.